This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Blatt Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
We are 1 day away from the start of the NFL season in 2020. Josh Hennig, Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. What a wild week it is. We're preparing for the start of the NFL season. We got NBA playoffs tonight. Game Night shortened to 30 minutes because we got Celtics, Raptors coming up at the bottom of the hour right here on 97.3 ESPN. Not just our home for the Eagles, not just for home for the NFL, but also for the NBA playoffs. Tonight, Celtics, Raptors. Tomorrow night, Chiefs, Texans. All the action right here on 97.3 ESPN. The PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open for you at 609-403-0973. It's a Weinberg Wednesday. Dave Weinberg will join me coming up in about 14 minutes from now to talk more about the Eagles. Of course, the big Eagles news happening today. A couple different news items. You can check them all out at 973ESPN.com. The Eagles had two very interesting things happen today. They announced their captains for the season. They have 8 captains in total. They have 3 for offense, 3 for defense, and 2 for the special teams. So a couple predictable names, a couple interesting names on there for you to check out. But the other story I wanted to hit on right now, before we get to any other news, because we got to talk about a little Sixers and NBA before we get the break, but the other news item that happened earlier today. So for those who may or may not have seen it, there was a report this morning about Lane Johnson and the Eagles, about how Lane Johnson was going to play, how bad is his injury. And then all of a sudden this afternoon, I'm just doing my thing, and I'm looking over and I see, bam, look who's at practice, Lane Johnson. And bam, who else is at practice? Miles Sanders. And wait a minute, who else is at practice? Jalen Reagor. And they're all in pads, and they're all actually doing work. They're not just hanging out. They're not just standing there now. Alshon Jeffrey's at practice, but he wasn't in full pads or working out with the rest of the team. And that's what's wild. I'm looking at these videos, and of course you check out all the videos right now at 973ESPN.com, and I'm thinking, man, the Eagles sat there and told us that all these guys are part of the injury report, and a bunch of these guys are on the field. Now, Javon Hargrave did not participate in practice, neither did Alshon Jeffrey, but it's a huge sign for Lane and Miles and Reagor to be on the field for a couple of reasons. One, because whether we always want to admit it or not, you look at somebody like Lane Johnson and you overlook how important he is to this football team. He is arguably the most important player on this team when it comes to when you pull him out of the lineup, what happens and how things can go sideways with that offensive line already without Brandon Brooks, an offensive line with moving Jason Peters back to left tackle. So for him to be out there on the field tells me that there's a good chance he plays on Sunday. And then Miles Sanders, we had heard for a while now that he was day-to-day, potentially going to be questionable, quote-unquote, for Sunday. But if you listen to Football at 4 on the Sports Bash every day, powered by the Inside the Birds podcast, whether it's Jeff Mosher or Adam Kaplan or Andrew DeCecco, they've all told you that the team, the Eagles, expect Miles Sanders to be back. And now he's back at practice, and he's dressed in pads doing drills. And then the other surprise was Jalen Reagor. I mean, how nuts was it that a guy who had a shoulder injury that people were very worried about just a couple of weeks ago, and now basically 10, 11 days removed from said injury, he's back at practice, catching punts, giving the thumbs up afterwards, running through receiver drills, and he looked good. He didn't look like he was in pain. He didn't look like he was wincing when he was catching the ball or had any impingement in the shoulder from the videos that I saw. So a lot of good news coming out of Eagles camp today. Of course, you can check out all the details right now on 973ESPN.com. We have the article up with all the video and all the pictures from Eagles practice today. We'll get to more Eagles and NFL coming up with Dave Weinberg, veteran Eagles beat writer, reporter. He's covered the Eagles for over 26 years. We'll get into that and more coming up with him about 10 minutes from now. But I don't want to overlook the news that happened last night. And this happened after I got off the air. And I'm almost glad it did because it allowed me to digest it a little bit. So, Billy Donovan was let go. It was a mutual parting of the ways is what all the NBA reporters and insiders are saying. That the Thunder plan on going one direction, and they felt that Billy Donovan wanted to be a part of a winning organization and all that jazz. So now his name has popped up in the Sixers. As the report goes, his name is floating around. It's of interest. And I don't get it. I don't understand the fascination with a Billy Donovan. And the text board is open, the PlaySugarHouse.com text board, 609-403-0973. Look, I just don't believe in this hogwash. I don't believe in this manure that people are trying to pitch to me on social media and on the platforms about Billy Donovan for the Sixers. Because wasn't the whole point of moving on from Brett Brown to get a coach who is going to elevate this team? Wasn't the whole point of moving on to bring in somebody who can elevate this team from where they are now to that next level? I remember it was Darryl Reynolds on the Sports Bash himself saying the Sixers are looking for their Steve Kerr. Okay, so if the Sixers are looking for their Steve Kerr, I'm sorry, but Billy Donovan does not fit that profile. See, the problem is that a lot of the horse manure, and I use that purposely, that I see out there from the Sixers Twitter and from the so-called, Sixers analysts out there. And listen, I respect people who cover the team day in and day out. Whether it's a Keith Bombay, who's been on the Sports Bash numerous times, whether it's a guy like Jason Blevins, who's covered for the Sixers for a while. I understand that people like that have a perspective on the team, and I respect their perspective. But there's a lot of perspectives out there that I got no time for. If you're going to tell me that Billy Donovan is that much better of a coach than Brett Brown, then either you and I are watching completely different basketball games, or you are 100 times smarter than me. And I doubt that either one of those are the case. Because at the end of the day, when I watch the Oklahoma City Thunder, I don't see a coach that is making the Sixers that much better. Listen, he won 55 games with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. And the years after that, he was a playoff team and nothing more. He didn't make that team that much better. He wasn't drastically elevating any player on that team. In fact, you could argue that the majority of his success is because he had Russell Westbrook, league MVP, and Chris Paul, a future Hall of Famer, on his roster, elevating the players on that team. Billy Donovan coming to the Sixers does not excite me, does not interest me. If you're serious about elevating this team, if you're serious about winning a championship, what does Billy Donovan bring to the table that other coaches can't? The reality is you cannot answer that question with a straight face. Tyronn Lue has won an NBA championship as a player and a coach. Jason Kidd has won an NBA championship as a player and has been a coach in 2 different coaching stops. And he's currently assistant on the Lakers. Those guys sound more like people who can elevate this team than Billy Donovan. And I'm not doubting Billy Donovan is a good NBA coach or a good basketball coach in general. He won 2 national championships in Florida with NBA players, by the way, Joakim Noah, Al Horford, just to name a few, Corey Brewer. We know he can coach. But if you're serious about taking that step from being a team that makes the playoffs to a team that has a chance to win a championship, there's no way that Billy Donovan is that guy. And you know who keeps bringing up Billy Donovan's name? It's the people that just hated Brett Brown. You hated Brett Brown because he didn't fit the profile that you wanted, not because Brett Brown was actually the worst coach in the league. There's a lot worse coaches in this league than Brett Brown, and there's a lot better coaching candidates than Billy Donovan. The problem is people run to the most famous person at the moment. It's like Instagram. Somebody gets popular on Instagram, and they recommend you follow them on Instagram, and you think the newest person on Instagram is the most exciting thing you've seen until the next name you see that floats up there on your recommended list, whether it's on Twitter or Instagram. Billy Donovan is not an elite NBA head coach. He's a very good coach who I think can have success somewhere else, but not in Philadelphia. 609-403-0973 is the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. We'll get back to the Eagles coming up next with Dave Weinberg, veteran Eagles writer and reporter. We'll get into all the Eagles news from today. Game night here on 97.3 ESPN. I'm Josh Hennig, hanging out with you. The show is being brought to you by GMS Law. Make the right call. With 4 convenient locations to serve you, visit them online at gmslaw.com. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on 97.3 ESPN. It's a Weinberg Wednesday here. Dave Weinberg, veteran Eagles writer, joins us every Wednesday here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN as we are preparing for Eagles versus Washington. You get all the action right here on 97.3 ESPN this Sunday. Of course, coverage begins this Sunday, 10 a.m. with the Locker Room with Billy Schwein, followed by Merrill Reese and Mike Quick with the calling. All the action here on 97.3 ESPN. Dave Weinberg joins us on the Boardwalk kind of hotline. Dave, on a scale of 1 to 5, how excited are you for football season?
Oh, 6.
Oh, I like to hear that. There you go.
Yeah, I've been waiting for this for a while. Yeah, it's nice that it's finally here. Like we talked about before, no preseason games. That just built up the anticipation even more. So it's a really exciting time.
So a couple of Eagles news I want to hit on with you because obviously I didn't expect all of this news to happen in one day, but I guess what they say, it rains, it pours, right? So first of all, let's talk about the guys who are back at practice. I think a lot of people were surprised to see both Lane Johnson and Jalen Reagor on the field after some previous reports stated that they would be out a little bit longer, and they were both in pads at practice going through drills.
Well, I'm not surprised about Lane. He's one of the tougher guys I've ever come across, to be honest with you. I mean, you almost have to cut his leg off for him not to play. He's just that kind of guy. He'll be out there come hell or high water. He's just the way he's wired. Jalen Reagor, I'm still waiting to see. I know he was out there doing some stuff today, but I just have this feeling that they're going to hold him out at least a game just to be on the safe side. He did look okay when he was out there today, but I'm just not ready to anoint him as a key part of the offense for the first game.
We know Miles Sanders is back out there too. He was a participant. So
right. Yep.
Is it safe to assume then that both Lane and Miles will be out there week 1, and then as you said, maybe Jalen's more closer to week 2 then?
Yeah, I would say that. I definitely Lane and Miles will be out there, I think, and they really need both of those guys. Like you had mentioned in your intro, Lane is a very valuable key part of that offense, especially given all the upheaval on the offensive line in the last few days. They really need him out there. And Miles, they've been talking all off season about how he's going to have a bigger role. He's going to be their bell cow, if you will, workhorse running back. So to not have him out there would be kind of difficult. So it's good to see both of those guys out there.
I haven't talked to you since the Jason Peters news happened the other day, so I'd love to get your perspective because you've covered Jason Peters for years. You've also covered Doug for years. What were your impressions of Peters, the story that Doug gave, saying, hey, Jason showed up in my office and said I want to move to left tackle, and I gave him a hug and said, let's go?
This is probably not going to be a popular opinion. I couldn't believe it. Since when does a player get to dictate where he's going to play? we've spent 2 weeks listening to Doug talk about after Dillard got hurt. Well, we're not ready to move Peters. He's entrenched at right guard. He's been working well with Jason Kelsey and Lane when he's been out there. We don't want to upset two positions, so we're just going to put Matt Pryor or Jordan Mailata out at left tackle and give them the work, see who does the best. And then all of a sudden Jason gets to decide, oh, yeah, okay, I'll play left tackle, and there's nothing you can do about it. So just, move me over there. I don't understand how you're able to dictate what you want to do to the coach. I mean, I've seen, like, as far as I remember, and I've been doing this for a little while, the coach is the guy who decides where you play and if you play. So I was stunned, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah, the first thing I thought of was the movie Remember the Titans, when Coach Herman Boone turns to Petey and say, because Petey was telling him, "Oh, I'm the star of this position." And he says, "Are you the coach of this team?" "No, sir." He says, "Do you know something I don't know?" He's like, "No." Like, that's the first thing I thought of. Like, how in any world does a player tell a coach, "Hey, coach, I'm playing this position"? The coach just says, "Okay." I feel like Doug was trying to put a beautiful spin on a much more complicated situation.
Yeah, I think Doug, he handled that in the worst possible way with the media. I mean, I don't know if it exactly went down the way he described it. He probably should have said something along the lines, Jason came into my office and said, I'd be more than willing to move back to left tackle if it'll help the team. And, I thought it over, and with Jeff Stoutland, we decided that maybe that is the best move. But the way he painted it, it was like Jason came in and said, "I'm playing left tackle, let's go." And, and Doug was like, "Oh, yeah, great. Okay, you do whatever you want." And that just doesn't – I mean, I know the pros are different than high school and college even, but still the player doesn't get to dictate what he wants to do. That was just stunning to me.
Dave Weinberg joining us for a Weinberg Wednesday here on 97.3 ESPN. Follow him on Twitter at Dave Weinberg19. Dave, the other news that came out today, the Eagles announced their captains, and I wouldn't say that any of the announcements was specifically surprising. I think most people believe, Wentz, Jason Peters, Jason Kelsey. Defense was a little interesting to see Rodney McLeod, but then the special teamers were two guys who have been here a very short amount of time, Duke Riley and Craig James. From all the reports, Craig James must have had, we heard he had an incredible training camp, but now he's a special teams captain. I mean, what the heck happened?
Yeah, I mean, the captaincies of an NFL are largely ceremonial positions. I mean, all it means really is you get to go out for the coin toss more than anything. It's not really that big of a deal. I mean, anything that happens in house is usually handled by the Veterans Committee, and I don't know if all those guys are on it. I was kind of surprised by Jason Peters being on there. I know I hate to keep harping on the guy, but I don't know why you need two offensive linemen as captain. I would think that Zach Ertz might have been a better choice. He's been around here a while. How about an offensive lineman, a tight end, and your quarterback? And yeah, even with the special teams, I was kind of surprised at those guys too. I would have thought maybe Rick Lovato, the long snapper, and Jake Elliott, the kicker. Maybe he's won a few games for them over the last couple of years. Maybe he'd be deserving. But I don't know if the players vote on it or how it works. But like you said, Craig and Duke must have been really standouts in training camp there on that nod.
Yeah, we also know, according to the so-called unofficial first depth chart by the Eagles, that Craig James is listed as the backup for Darius Slay, and I think that answers some of the questions for why this team let go Sidney Jones and Rasul Douglas, because obviously James must have had some sort of impact on training camp. And Dave, covering the Eagles for as long as you have, that there's always a guy who surprises a team in training camp.
That's true. And Jim has always been kind of high on Craig. He talked about it a couple of weeks ago where, Craig he kind of caught his eye last season when he had some limited opportunities, and he was looking forward to seeing what he could do. And he described him as one of those guys who made the most of his chance, that, he was given some opportunities to play during training camp and scrimmages and what have you, and really stood out. So yeah, I wasn't surprised, only because of the way Jim has spoken about him over the course of training camp.
You mentioned Jim Schwartz. I want to touch on that real quick with you, and that is, I feel like there's a bit of a different vibe from Jim this training camp. I don't know if it's just because I'm so football deprived that maybe, I'm not reading between the lines properly, but it seems like that Schwartz is a little more confident coming into this year than a couple years past.
You're not too far off base there, although I don't know what grounds he has to be all that confident. I mean, when you lose like your defensive leader with Malcolm Jenkins, he had some injuries up front with Hargrave, and linebacking core is pretty much unproven. So I don't know why he would be that confident. And like the rest of the secondary is pretty much overhauled. But I guess he has a lot of confidence in, like you said, Darius Slay. Fletcher Cox is as good as it gets. Brandon Graham's as good as it gets. So I guess he just has enough pieces in place to give him that confidence. But you're right. By nature, he's kind of a cautious kind of guy, glass half empty, if you will. So it's nice to see him with a glass half full attitude for a change.
Yeah, Jim is usually glass half empty and with 200 baseball analogies on hand. So
yeah, that's him. Yep.
Dave, also looking ahead to this Sunday, of course, of playing Washington, and my biggest concern is that Washington defense. Every time that Jack Del Rio shows up, whether it was in Carolina, Jacksonville, Denver, or with the Raiders, that first year, those defenses are always better. And that defensive front for Washington is not just rivaling the Eagles, but they rival some of the best in the NFL this year.
Yeah, that's the main concern for this week for me. Given all the changes that they've made on the offensive line, you have basically 4 days to get ready for with a new left tackle or a new old left tackle with Jason Peters. And I guess you're going to throw Matt Pryor in at right guard. Lane Johnson hasn't practiced much at all. And now you're going against one of the best defensive fronts in the NFL. So that's going to be the main challenge for the Eagles. I think they have enough talent to win this game. I think they're going to be outscore the Redskins, but it's not going to be as easy as people think. I think that it's going to take, like we talked about, the lack of preseason and everything. Teams are going to take a little. They're going to have to take a little while to get their feet on the ground and get rolling. And I think all these games are going to be pretty close within the first couple of weeks.
He's Dave Weinberg. It's a Weinberg Wednesday. Make sure you follow him on Twitter at DaveWeinberg19. You also check out his extra point columns over at 973ESPN.com. As all guests, he appears on Game Night on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Dave, always appreciate the time and the insights. We'll catch you next week.
All right, Josh. Thanks again. Enjoy football this weekend.
Football tomorrow night, football Saturday, football Sunday, football Monday. I'm all bought in. Josh Hennig, Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN, leading you up to Celtics Raptors coming up just about 2 minutes from now. PlaySugarHouse.com text board is open, 609-403-0973. We get a couple comments in here before we bounce out of here, 609-403-0973. Tom from the Village chimes in on the PlaySugarHouse.com text board. He says, I hear you about Billy Donovan. I feel the same way about Ty Lue. I don't think either is a good coach. They just have Hall of Fame talent making them look good. That's Tom from the Village. And Tom, I appreciate that point. That's one of the best arguments I've heard against any of these coaches, and that is, listen, you don't win with mediocre players. Nobody does. There's nobody in NBA history who didn't win with elite talent, okay? Even the 1 year that the Portland Trail Blazers won an NBA championship, they had Bill Walton, okay? So it doesn't matter who you are. In NBA history, you got to have talent to win championships. And I get you on Ty Lue, and I get you on Billy Donovan. The reason why I like Ty Lue better is because he challenged LeBron. He was a guy that got in LeBron's face and pushed him to be the best he can be. And I think that's somebody the Sixers need. They need somebody who's going to push them, hold them accountable. But if we take Ty Lue out and we take Billy Donovan out, I still think there are other candidates out there to be talked about. I know that Kevin McCormick over at 97.3ESPN.com has written about, guys, for example, like he's not a huge fan of Jason Kidd. I know some people love the Jason Kidd concept as a hire. Dave Yeager's a guy people have talked about for a while. I think Yeager would be a great coach here. The problem is when he was in Memphis and then in Sacramento, he couldn't get along with the front offices in those two places. If you bring him in here, are you 100% sure that he's not going to implode on this front office as well? There's other coaches out there. Ime Udoka is a candidate as well. So there's a lot of names out there. And by the way, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, the Chicago Bulls are very interested in Billy Donovan. Now, that's a team that makes a lot of sense for Billy Donovan because he can go in there and work with those younger players and maybe get them from being basement dwellers to contenders. I just don't think Billy Donovan's got to get you from a contender to a champion. Josh Hennig, this is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll be back for a full hour tomorrow to preview the 2020 NFL season.